Which of the following statements are not true about nitrogen-fixing bacteria? They convert nitrogen gas into ammonium ions. They are found in nodules on the roots of legumes. They break down nitrate ions into ammonium ions. They play a vital role in nitrogen cycle in nature. The answer is they break down nitrate ions into ammonium ions. The only acellular microorganism is fungi, bacteria, viruses, protozoa. Virus is the answer. Which of the following are the most significant factors in determining biome type? Soil type and soil depth, temperature and rainfall, temperature and climates, climates and grazing animals. Temperature and rainfall is the answer. Biodiversity is an area with specific biotic and abiotic conditions, a measure taken by people to restore an ecosystem, replacement of one ecosystem by another ecosystem, a measure of the overall variability of life on the Earth. The answer is a measure of the overall variability of life on the Earth. The presence of several different biomes within the Ethiopia results in the high species of richness of plants and mammals, the low species richness of plants and mammals, the high species richness of plants but low mammals, the high species richness of mammals but low plants. The high species richness of plants and mammals is the answer. The genetic code is not a triplet code, universal code, degenerate code, overlapping code. Overlapping code is the answer. Chromosomes are made from two chemicals, DNA and a set of globular proteins, RNA and a set of globular proteins, DNA and a set of fibrous proteins, RNA and a set of fibrous proteins. DNA and a set of fibrous proteins is the answer. A woman with unknown blood type and a man also with unknown blood type could potentially have 4 children with all blood groups in different years. What are the possible blood groups of the parents? A and B blood group, A and O blood group, B and O blood group, AB and O blood group. A and B blood group is the answer. Cytosine makes up 42% of the nucleotides in a sample of DNA from an organism. Approximately what percentage of the nucleotides in this sample will be thiamine? 58%, 42%, 16%, 8%. Eight percent is the answer. A person who has type O blood has A antigen on the cell surface, B antigens on the cell surface, no surface antigens on the cells, both A and B antigens on the cell surface. No surface antigens on the cells is the answer. The four daughter cells produced in meiosis will have a number of chromosomes and will differ genetically from each other, to n number of chromosomes and will differ genetically from each other, to n number of chromosomes and will be genetically identical to each other, n number of chromosomes and will be genetically identical to each other. N number of chromosomes will differ genetically from each other is the answer. What characterizes a prokaryotic cell? The presence of mitochondria, the presence of chloroplast, the membrane bound on nucleus, the unicellular level of organization. The unicellular level of organization is the answer. A larger brain not allows humans to create life on planet Earth, plan in advance to avoid attack, develop and use tools and weapons, run faster in a more upright posture. Run faster in a more upright posture is the answer. When single-stranded DNA from a human is mixed with a single-stranded DNA from a chimpanzee, we find that about 98% of the DNA is homologous. This can be taken as evidence that humans evolved from chimpanzees, chimpanzees evolved from humans, humans and chimpanzees are closely related, humans and chimpanzees originated in similar environments. Humans and chimpanzees are closely related is the answer. Which of the following is not the observation on which Darwin based his theory of evolution? The offspring shows a great deal of genetic variation. Characteristics are inheritable from parent to offspring. The inheritance, the acquired traits from parent to offspring. Competition of offspring to resource or survival of the fittest. The inheritance, the acquired traits from parent to offspring is the answer. Which of the following determines the sex of a child? The length of the mother's pregnancy period, the presence of a Y chromosome in a sperm, the presence of X chromosome in an ovum, the length of time between ovulation and copulation. The presence of a Y chromosome in a sperm is the answer. A cross between two individuals results in a ratio of 9:1 for four possible phenotypes of progeny. This is an example of a trihybrid cross, dihybrid cross, test or back cross, monohybrid cross. Trihybrid cross is the answer. A pregnant woman has an equal chance for her baby being blood group A and blood group AB. Which one of the following shows the possible genotypes of the woman and the father of her child? IA, IA, and IB, IB. IA, IB, IA, IB, and IB, IO, IB, IO. IA, IO, IA, IO, and IB, IO, IB, IO. IA, IB, IA, IB, and IA, IO, IA, IO. Trihybrid cross is the answer. Functions of transferase enzymes. Change of the molecular form of the substrate molecules, joining of two molecules by the formation of new bonds, transfer of a specific group from one substrate to another, removal of non-hydrolytic group from a substrate molecules. Transfer of a specific group from one substrate to another is the answer. Some enzymes have been named based on the source from which they were first identified. An example of this is pepsin, papain, nuclease, amylase. Papain is the answer. In which organelle would the given event most likely occur? Lysosomes, ribosome, mitochondria, chloroplast. The answer is mitochondria. In cellular respiration process, the carriers for the electron transport system are located within the stroma of chloroplast, on the cristae of mitochondria, within matrix of mitochondria, within the cytoplasm of cell. On the cristae of mitochondria is the answer. Which of the following pathways will use coenzyme A during aerobic cellular respiration? Glycolysis, link reaction, Krebs cycle, Calvin cycle. Link reaction is the answer. How many times does the Krebs cycle term per glucose molecule break down? 5 times, 4 times, 2 times, 3 times. Two times is the answer. Which one of the following metabolic pathways is common in aerobic and anaerobic respiration? The glycolysis, the chemosmosis, the citric acid cycle, oxidative phosphorylation. The glycolysis is the answer. The light reaction occurs in the dash while the Calvin cycle occurs in the dash. Cytosol of cytoplasm, stroma, thylakoid membranes, stroma, thylakoid membranes, cytoplasma, thylakoid membranes. Thylakoid membranes, stroma is the answer. Which of the following process produces the most ATP per molecule of glucose oxidized? Aerobic respiration, anaerobic respiration, alcoholic fermentation, lactic acid fermentation. Aerobic respiration is the answer. What are the products of the late reactions that are subsequently used by the independent reaction of photosynthesis? Carbon dioxide and RAP, oxygen and carbon dioxide, ATP and NADPH, electrons and photons. ATP and NADPH is the answer. The immediate products of C3 and C4 photosynthesis in the late independent reaction of the Calvin cycles are respectively a ribulose biphosphate and malic acid, carbon dioxide and glucose molecule, phosphoglycerate and oxaloacetate, glyceraldehyde phosphate and phosphoenol pyruvate. Phosphoglycerate and oxaloacetate is the answer. In which of the following type of dominance both extremes have a selective advantage compared with the mean and the two distinct types begin to emerge showing the extreme values of the original population? Disruptive selection, stabilizing selection, artificial selection, directional selection. Disruptive selection is the answer. The structure of a protein that describes the overall shape formed by several polypeptide chains which compose the protein. Primary structure, tertiary structure, secondary structure, quaternary structure. Quaternary structure is the answer. Which of the following organisms have the greatest problem with photorespiration? C2 plants, C3 plants, C4 plants, CAM plants. C3 plant is the answer. Which of the following is not archaebacteria? Sulfobacteria, methanobacteria, halophilic bacteria, cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria is the answer. Which of the following is a biotic factor that influences how quickly a population of the same species or of a different species increases in the size or decreases in size? Predation, pathogens, temperature, competition. Temperature is the answer. A grade 10 entrance tricks digital school section A students try to see demonstration about to investigate the presence of starch in a green leaf by using the following procedure. The first procedure is collect fresh plant leaf, then put the leaf in a boiling water for 1 minute, then remove the leaf using forceps from boiling water. The fourth step is Put the leaf in a test tube that contains alcohol and boil again in the boiling water of 5 minutes. Watch as the alcohol boils and the chlorophyll is removed from the leaf. Using forceps, remove the leaf from the boiling tube and arrange the leaf in cold water. Then at the seventh step, put the leaf in a petri dish and add iodine solution on it. Why is the leaf boiled in alcohol? Using a water bath instead of direct heating. To speed up chlorophyll extraction, to prevent alcohol from igniting due to flammability, to avoid denaturing starch molecules, to enhance iodine reactivity with the starch. To prevent alcohol from igniting due to flammability is the answer. From the question number 35, if a student escapes step 2 or boiling the leaf in a water first, what is the most likely experimental outcome? Chlorophyll will not be removed, masking the iodine test result. Enzymes in the leaf will continue metabolizing starch, leading to a false negative. The leaf cells will rupture, releasing starch prematurely. Iodine will fail to penetrate the leaf's waxy cuticle. Enzymes in the leaf will continue metabolizing starch, leading to a false negative, is the answer. From the question number 35, what observation confirms the presence of starch in the leaf? The leaf turns yellow-brown upon iodine application. The leaf develops a blue-black coloration. The chlorophyll dissolves, revealing white patches. The iodine solution forms a purple precipitate. The leaf develops a blue-black coloration is the answer. The conversion of one molecule of glucose to two molecules of pyruvate results in the net formation of 2 molecules of ATP, 4 molecules of ATP, 36 molecules of ATP, 38 molecules of ATP. Two molecules of ATP is the answer. Unknown enzyme was added into two test tubes. The first tube contained starch, the second one sucrose. After 10 minutes incubation, the solution in the first tube gave us the positive result. In the second one, negative. What enzyme was added? Lipase, sucrase, amylase, lactase. Amylase is the answer. Competitive inhibitors stop an enzyme from working by changing the shape of the enzyme molecule, binding with the substrate to form complex products, by combining with the end product of the biological reaction, by blocking the active site of the enzyme in a reversible manner. Blocking the active site of the enzyme in a reversible manner is the answer. A researcher made an interesting observation about a protein made by rough endoplasmic reticulum and eventually used to build a cell's plasma membrane. The protein in the membrane was actually slightly different from the protein made in the endoplasmic reticulum. The protein was probably changed in the rough endoplasmic reticulum, smooth endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria, Golgi apparatus. Golgi apparatus is the answer. You are studying the transport of a certain type of molecule into cells. You find that transport slows down when the cells are poisoned with a chemical that inhibits energy production. Under normal circumstances, the molecule you are studying is probably transported into the cell by simple division, facilitated division, active transport, passive transport. Active transport is the answer. The stage of meiosis when pairs of homologous chromosomes separate from each other and migrate to opposite poles of a cell is called prophase 1, metaphase 1, anaphase 1, telophase 1. Anaphase 1 is the answer. Which of the following is a feature found in both prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells? Multiple linear chromosomes in each cell, ribosomes accomplish protein synthesis, extensive array of membrane-bound nucleus, mitotic partition chromosomes into 4 cells. Ribosomes accomplish protein synthesis is the answer. Which of the following is not a principle of the cell theory? Cells are the basic units of life. All living things are made of cells. Very few cells are able to reproduce. All cells come from pre-existing cells. Very few cells are able to reproduce is the answer. Bacteriophage, a plant infecting viruses, a fungus infecting viruses, an animal infecting viruses, a bacteria infecting viruses. A bacteria infecting viruses is the answer. A secondary succession differs from a primary succession to the same climax in that it requires pioneer species to start, takes a greater period of time, starts from uncolonized ground, has an existing seed bank to draw on. Has an existing seed bank to draw on is the answer. Which of the following is the most likely explanation for a high rate of crossing over between two genes? The two genes code for the same protein. The two genes are on different chromosomes. The two genes are both located near the centromere. The two genes are far apart on the same chromosome. The two genes are far apart on the same chromosome is the answer. Which of the following is the group of organisms responsible for production of the first oxygen on the Earth? Archaeobacteria, ordinary bacteria, eukaryotes, cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria is the answer. Which of the following is not the use of enzymes in industry? Allows less energy spent on heating the reactant's molecules. Allows the substrate molecules to have complementary shape. Allows the reactions to take place at much lower temperatures. Allow less accumulation of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Allow the substrate molecules to have complementary shape is the answer. Which type of energy transformation occurs in photosynthesis? Heat energy to electrical energy, light energy to chemical energy, mechanical energy to electrical energy, chemical energy to mechanical energy. Light energy to chemical energy is the answer. Which two plant structures are responsible for storing energy from sunlight and later releasing it for cells to use? Chloroplast and vacuole, mitochondria and chloroplast, protoplasm and cytoplasm, chloroplast and mitochondria. Mitochondria and chloroplast is the answer. From the following diseases, which one is an infectious disease? Corona, diabetes, scurvy, arthritis. Corona is the answer. Immunity acquired by vaccination of weakened or killed microbe is natural active, natural passive, artificial active, artificial passive. Artificial active is the answer. Sometimes viruses can be classified into living organisms because they can excrete, respire, feed, reproduce. Reproduce is the answer. From the following infectious human diseases, identify the one that is caused by a virus. Malaria, cholera, hepatitis B, candidiasis. Hepatitis B is the answer. A type of microscope that allows a researcher to view the structure of cells in great detail is optical microscope, simple microscope, transmission electron microscope, scanning electron microscope. Transmission electron microscopy is the answer. Which one of the following factors does not directly influence the rate of an enzyme catalyzed reaction? Enzyme concentration, temperature, substrate concentration, light intensity. Light intensity is the answer. Why Louis Pasteur used a swan-necked flask instead of straight-necked one in his experiment to disprove the theory of spontaneous generation? To allow free passage of air to the brose inside the flask, to keep the brose in the flask, not to kill microorganisms, to prevent the escape of any microorganisms from the flask, to trap particles from the air that might enter the flask before reaching the brose. To trap particles from the air that might enter the flask before reaching the brose is the correct answer. Which one of the following is correct about apoenzymes and coenzymes? Apoenzymes bind with coenzymes to give catalytic enzyme. Coenzymes bind with a cofactor to form active enzyme. Both apoenzymes and coenzymes combine to form non-active enzyme. Coenzyme binds with active enzyme to give catalytic enzymes. Apoenzymes bind with coenzymes to give catalytic enzyme is the answer. Question number 61 is based on the following reaction. Reactant A plus reactant B plus enzyme which gives us intermediates, then intermediates will give us product AB plus enzyme. At which point are the chemical bond weakened? Product AB, reactant B, reactant A, intermediate. Intermediate is the correct answer. In which of the following mixtures the enzyme catalase acts faster in hydrogen peroxide? Water plus hydrogen chloride plus fresh potato cube, hydrogen peroxide plus sodium hydroxide plus fresh potato cube, hydrogen peroxide plus fresh potato cube, hydrogen peroxide plus sodium chloride plus fresh potato cube. Hydrogen peroxide plus fresh potato cube is the answer. Suppose 25% of the molecule of enzyme is inhibited by a non-competitive inhibitor. Which one of the following will happen if most the substrate increases by 50%? The reaction would be double. More enzyme molecules will get inhibited. The rate of the reaction would decrease by 50%. The rate of the reaction would remain the same. The rate of the reaction would remain the same is the answer. The organelle which is responsible to determine the final destination of molecules in a cell is ribosome, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus, lysosome. Golgi apparatus is the answer. Which factor doesn't influence the rate of facilitated diffusion? Surface area of the membrane, concentration gradient, thickness of the membrane, temperature. Thickness of the membrane is the answer. Which of the following paired organelles are membranes bounded? Ribosome and peroxisomes, mitochondria and ribosomes, chloroplast and ribosome, chloroplast and mitochondria. Chloroplast and mitochondria is the answer. Which type of molecules cannot pass across the cell membrane by simple division? Charged molecules, nonpolar molecules, lipid-soluble molecules, molecules of very small size. Charged molecules is the answer. Which of the following hominids has larger brain size? Homo sapiens, Homo erectus, Homo neanderthalensis, Homo habilis. Homo sapiens is the answer. 3 cells A, B, and C with their concentration 5 molarity, 10 molarity, and 2 molarity respectively were placed in 3 solutions with 2 molarity of each. Then which one is false about cells? Cell C bursts if it is animal cell. The environment is hypotonic to cell A. Cell B becomes turgid if it is plant cell. Cell A gains water by osmosis. Cell C bursts if it is animal cell. An enzyme which initiates the separation of the polynucleotide strands during DNA replication is RNA polymerase, ligase, DNA helicase, DNA polymerase. DNA helicase is the answer. Which of the following cell types can be reached in lysosome? Red blood cells, nerve cells, phagocytic cells, muscle cells. Phagocytic cell is the answer. Which of the following terms best describes the concept of variety of organisms present in a given area? Biome, biodiversity, population, niche. Biodiversity is the answer. One of the following is not true about substrate level phosphorylation. ATP synthase does not involve, produces a relatively small amount of ATP, takes place only in cytoplasm. The process is catalyzed by an enzyme. Takes place only in cytoplasm is the answer. Which one of the following molecules regenerates at the end of Krebs cycle? Acetyl-CoA, oxaloacetate, citrate, pyruvate. Oxaloacetate is the correct answer. From the following demographic factors, which one that affects the world human population? Immigration, migration, mortality. Mortality is the answer. The reaction of Calvin cycle require all of the following except not oxidized ATP, not reduced carbon dioxide. Not oxidized is the answer. The following organic molecule which is neither produced nor used up by glycolysis process is ATP, NADH, NAD+, FAD. FAD is the correct answer. How many molecules of ATP will be generated as a result of the oxidation of 1 mole of NADH to inactively respiring mitochondria? 0, 2, 3, 6. Three is the answer. What is the importance of chemosmosis in photosynthesis and cellular respiration? Splitting of water molecule, operating the proton pump, combining hydrogen and carbon, synthesizing ATP. Synthesizing ATP is the answer. How is possible for different species coexist in ecosystem? Each species has a specific biome. Each species occupies different niche within the ecosystem. All the species occupies the same niche within the ecosystem. Each species has a specific biosphere. Each species occupies a different niche within the ecosystem is the answer. Which one of the following is not true about cyclic photophosphorylation? Only photosystem 1 is used. Reduced NADP is not formed. Oxygen does not produced. It occurs when there is excess sugar. It occurs when there is excess sugar is the answer. Where does the light-independent reaction of photosynthesis occurs in the chloroplast? In the thylakoid membrane, in all parts of the chloroplast, in the fluid of the stroma, in the stroma opening. In the thylakoid membrane is the correct answer. Which of the following is true about gram-positive bacteria? They stain pink by gram stain. They have thick peptidoglycan cell wall. They produce endotoxins. They are producers. They have thick peptidoglycan cell wall is the answer. Suppose in a monohybrid cross, 120 F2 plants were produced. What is the number of the plants that are expected to have the dominant and the recessive phenotype? 19 dominant and 13 recessive. 100 dominant and 20 recessive, 60 dominant and 60 recessive, 120 dominant and 120 recessive. Nineteen dominant and 13 recessive is the answer. Question 85 to 87 are based on the following groups of organisms. Number 1, arthropods. Number 2, angiosperms. Number 3, birds. Number 4, gymnosperms. Number 5, algae. Number 6, amphibians. Number 7, fish. Number 8, mollusks. Number 9, ferns. Number 10, mosses. Which of the above group belong to the plant kingdom? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 4, 8, 9, 10, 2, 4, 5, 9, 10, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10. Two, 4, 5, 9, 10 is the answer. The biological field that studies about the groups listed under numbers 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 6, 7, and 8 is botany, anthropology, zoology, invertebrate zoology. Zoology is the correct answer. The best place for classifying the housefly would be in Group 1, Group 6, Group 7, Group 8. Group 1 is the correct answer. If a substance is injected into the right ventricle of a leaf, which part of the body the substance reaches last? Lungs, left auricle, left ventricle, pulmonary artery. Left ventricle is the answer. The tricuspid valve prevents the backflow of blood from the left ventricle to left auricle, right auricle to vein cava, right auricle to right ventricle to right auricle. Right ventricle through right auricle is the correct answer. If one breathes over cobalt chloride paper for some time, the color of the paper will turn from blue to pink. This indicates that exhaled air contains carbon dioxide, exhaled air contains water vapor, exhaled air contains heat, exhaled air contains oxygen. Exhaled air contains water vapor is the correct answer. What percentage the amount of carbon-14 originally present in a fossil would be left after its second half-life? 25%, 50%, 75%, 12.5%. %25 is the correct answer. Which of the following is the correct order in which vibrations caused by sound waves pass from the outer to the inner ear? Malus to incus, incus to stapes, stapes to oval window. Malus to stapes, stapes to incus, incus to oval windows. Malus to stapes, incus to round window. Incus to malus, malus to stapes, stapes to oval window. Malus to incus, incus to stapes, stapes to oval window is the correct answer. A person crossed two round-shaped cells. He obtained 5,474 round-shaped and 1,815 wrinkled-shaped. What are the most likely genotypes of the two round-shaped cells? The answer is choice A. The taste buds located at the back of the tongue detects bitter taste, salty taste, sour taste, sweet taste. Bitter taste is the correct answer. They accommodate for distant and near objects by changing the size of pupil, size of the lens, length of the eyeball, distance of the retina from the lens. Shape of the lens is the answer. In a simple reflex arc, the path of the nerve impulse is sensory neuron to motor neuron to association neuron, motor neuron to association neuron to sensory neuron, association neuron to sensory neuron to motor neuron, sensory neuron to association association neuron to motor neuron. Sensory neuron to association neuron to motor neuron is the answer. Which of the following is not part of the central nervous system? Medulla oblongata, cerebellum, spinal cord, cranial nervous. Cranial nervous is the answer. A person under the increasing influence of alcohol loses first his ability to think clearly, second his ability to walk straight, third his ability to breathe normally. Based on this evidence, which is the correct order in which alcohol affects the central nervous system? Medulla to cerebellum, cerebellum to cerebrum, cerebrum to cerebellum, cerebellum to medulla, cerebellum to medulla, medulla to cerebrum, cerebellum to cerebrum, cerebrum to medulla. Cerebrum to cerebellum, cerebellum to medulla is the correct answer. Which of the following is true about tropism? Shoots are negatively phototropism, shoots are positively geotropism, roots are positively phototropism, roots are positively hydrotropism. Roots are positively hydrotropism is the correct answer. Dr. Tewolde Birhane ገብረእግዚአብሔር is a biologist whose research is on genetic engineering, human evolution, HIV/AIDS, environmental protection, and diversity. Environmental protection and diversity is the correct answer.